Hello, and welcome to another episode of TacoBytes, your daily bite of Degen, episode number 966. Coming to you live from somewhere, nowhere, Dallas, Texas. We are live today on LinkedIn, Player One Taco YouTube, Xerox Degens YouTube, Twitch, Twitter Spaces, Rumble, Kick, On-Chain via Abstract, Telegram, Arena, and for shits and giggles, we are on Pump.fun. I am live with actually someone becoming like a good friend that is one of those voices that just sort of calm you, but who's doing amazing things. I want to introduce the man from Otoy, Render Foundation, Dr. Trevor Jones.
Hey,
The one and
Taco,
only.
so good to be here, man. 966 is crazy. That's a fantastic number of daily doses. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and on top of all of that is the mixed in spice of everything nice, like my one-on-one little quick bite interviews that I do out in the field. We don't even know how many of those there are. So it's one of those things to where we have
I love
the
this.
fun side of doing this anywhere and everywhere in the world.
As I said to you in the intro, this is going to go sideways fast with the iPad already turning us over.
Yeah. And this is one of those things where I've done this show live in a club, from a DJ booth, outside nightclubs with huge influencers, this inside conferences. I've done it mobile. I did this once from the back of an airplane flying over the Atlantic.
Oh, fantastic.
So,
well, I'm honored. You're
honored.
now adding from a hotel in LA to your mix.
Exactly. And, but with Trevor Jones, I want to know more about this doctor side of Trevor Jones.
Yeah. The doctor side came from my dad. He's a radiologist. And it just stuck with me. They called me Dr. Jones from when I was a young kid, and it sort of carried around with me. I'd love to pretend there's a PhD or more behind it, but really it was a childhood nickname that became my social media handle.
All right. Dr. Jones. I like it. I can see it.
Yep.
But you come from a bigger background. Right now, you are the COO
of Otoy,
of Otoy and the Render Foundation.
Yep.
For those that don't know, what is Otoy?
Okay, so Otoy is the for-profit company that runs services on the Render network. It's one of a couple, but really the founder of the Render network. And it's an amazing team. For me, the story of Otoy is really the story of Jules and Jules's life opus.
And I got to meet Jules and hear a little bit of his opus at RenderCon.
Yep. It goes back to when he was a teenager walking on the Santa Monica Pier and walking up to a video game called Dragon's Lair and being absolutely blown away at the graphics of that video game versus what he's getting on his home computer. And it really kicked off a life journey on trying to democratize that and make it possible for anyone to create that type of content. And it weaves so many paths. He went from there, locked himself away at home and rebuilt it on his computer using Shockwave, which was just not possible at the time. So one of those amazing feats. And from there, he formed a game studio, built some amazing games, but really always struggled that they weren't photorealistic like the movies and like real life. And turn of the century, he wound that down and really put his dedication towards solving the problem of photorealistic content. And he decided to focus on rendering, which is a very boring subject and something most folks don't know a whole lot about, but is so important. It's really in every video and animation you see. And what rendering is really the last step in taking a model someone's built and converting it into being photorealistic by calculating light bouncing off all angles and really coming back with something that is realistic. It's an amazing process. And what Jules's hypothesis was was that it could be done faster on the GPU. And that was one of those other sort of, call it second impossible tasks that everyone said couldn't be done. And he proved it could, and at a significantly more efficient manner than on the CPU. So that really kickstarted, I would say, a whole commercial use case for the GPU, and helped companies like NVIDIA really scale on the back of, before that, GPUs were really just video processors. So he birthed the 3D rendering, GPU rendering industry, and it's been an amazing ride from there. We watched rendering become more and more photorealistic as we went from sort of grainy images to better and better images to video to 4K video, and even now we're on the cusp of another jump as the world starts moving to 3D. But with each of these pushes, we've come up against the bounds of compute power. And so, Jules's first solution to this was to go to the cloud, to the hyperscalers. And so we started with deals with all of them, Amazon, Azure, and more. Eric Schmidt came on our advisory board. But the real challenge we had was NVIDIA's pricing model made it restrictive. Enterprise GPUs were sold at a real premium to consumer GPUs, yet they weren't as performant, for at least for rendering, as those price differentials implied. So what we saw was there just wasn't a lot of capacity in the enterprise side for GPUs. And we had a watershed moment. We were working with one of our investors, Madison Square Gardens, and they were trying to put something up on the big screen. And Jules, just doing the calc in his head, said, guys, even if you used all of Amazon's West Coast compute, you can't get this done in the time frame. It's just not going to scale. And so it was kind of an aha moment where he stepped back, and he has a number of patents. One of them was to patent what ultimately became the render network. It's a SETI at home, contribute your own home compute. And this was right at the time that Ethereum had started really making things interesting with smart contracts. And Jules looked at it and really saw an opportunity to start the render network on the back of a number of key things. One, smart contracts being great for being able to pay people across multiple countries for work being done. But also on top of that, the fact that you could actually put stuff on chain and show proof of creation. And so this was really the genesis for the render network, which is a distributed network of consumer GPUs contributed by artists across the world. And the great thing is these artists help people create stuff for the largest stages, for Hollywood, for large concerts, for the Sphere, and even for NASA. So it's become an amazing community of contributors who not only contribute their compute power, but create some of the most amazing creations you see out there. And it always blows my mind that they're absolutely everywhere.
I've seen, and not like, so you talked Madison Square Gardens, but you guys like even go deeper, like the Sphere in Las Vegas, some of the buildings and displays in like Dubai, around the world. The displays are being used, powered by Render Network.
Correct. So, when you think about anything that is created and not just filmed, it takes a ton of computer power. And the great thing about the render network is it allows you to do things in parallel. So, if you were rendering something on your computer there that we're talking on right now, you would have to do each frame in series. And, if you wanted to render a good piece of content, conceptually, it could take hours, if not days, right? The great thing about the render network is we send different frames to different nodes and get them done in minutes in parallel, as opposed to hours and or even more. So it's really a game changer for speed of content delivery for those types of artists. And at its heart, it's always had AI integrated into what we do. At the end of your render, we do a process called denoising, and that is AI cleaning up the image. And so, it's been really interesting for us as a new commercial use case has emerged for the GPU in AI. It's helped us reposition what the render network was founded for and position it towards really a new large future opportunity in AI. And today we're really looking at two types of jobs on the network, the traditional rendering jobs as well as AI jobs. And those AI jobs, are probably going to be inference at the start, but really the way the world is moving, it won't be long before it's training and full-scale usage of what is an absolutely massive decentralized network of consumer GPUs that could be tapped into.
And I want to talk on that in a second, but because there's some big things on the pipeline side of
Yeah.
things, like the render network.
Yep.
Um, but like you guys sort of launched, as you were sort of talking about, you launched on AWS, Azure, and
Yep.
all the big cloud providers, and you sort of went big like 2019, 2020. So you guys have, before that, 2017, you guys sort of started everything and explaining this network participation
Yeah.
and render farms. I saw a really great post on LinkedIn today from someone that was sort of talking about their experience on being a creator. They were
Mhm.
used to use these large Hollywood VFX render farms because
Yep.
there's a difference between render with a lowercase r and render with the uppercase.
Yep.
And rendering as a verb noun, is, like you said, adding physics to a final image and everything like that, making sure everything aligns. And there was some really cool stuff that was in my mind that I want to touch on too. Um, but now, instead of it and taking weeks and costing hundreds, thousands of dollars, to where um, one of the coolest people I've met, Chris Clemson,
Yep.
saying, he's doing jobs now that hours that used to
Yep.
take weeks.
Yeah.
And his claim to fame is congesting the render network so badly, you know?
We like those problems. I mean,
Yeah.
those are great problems to have. We had the Corridor Crew folks. I don't know if you know them, but they did a test on us, and they had a scene that would have taken them 13 hours to render. They got it back in about 20 minutes, and I think it cost them $12. So, it truly is game changing for democratizing the ability to create content in a way that just wasn't possible for certain people, with your
Yeah.
own small computer at home. It's
Yeah.
really, it's amazing to help out the audience and community and watch them produce just some of the greatest, online digital products in the world.
And
And
yeah,
then,
because you,
yeah,
you answered a question that during RenderCon, someone asked you, what's the cost? And you're like, well, the cost is already eaten by someone having a home computer or a
yep,
laptop. So the cost is electricity,
yep,
just being on and being part of the render network. And they're basically, they might not be getting used 24/7 or, 15 hours out of the day or however much they're getting used, but like that offsets and subsidizes, one, the cost of electricity that they're paying, but also the cost of their hardware eventually. And
yeah,
so, not, you know, I know as distributed networks get larger and larger, work gets spread out even more, but you actually sort of bring it to like a job can only be done by a certain amount of people. So it's sort of like, but then you have a lot of jobs going on at once.
yeah. Yeah, so yes to both. I mean, um, it's such a it's such a great thing to see artists be able to earn enough doing these rendering jobs to help sustain and do more creative things. That part I absolutely love. We run an actual foundation node, and we show the profitability of the node. It does phenomenally well. The foundation actually contributes that back, but it's just a means of publicly demonstrating, the actual return versus the they're really marginal electricity cost. And for us, we can't wait for more and more AI and rendering workloads to scale this globally so that more and more folks with GPUs can tap into this and access it. A good stat I like to give is there are about 5 or 6 million GPUs sitting today with the hyperscalers, with the Amazons and Azures. There are 1.5 billion GPUs in the world. So an absolute order of magnitude. Now, those 1.5 billion are not all performant enough to do rendering or to do AI, but the subset that are is absolute multiples. The estimates are well over 250,000. Sorry, 250,000,000 versus 5 million. So there's a massive untapped opportunity out there. Think of not just NVIDIA devices, but Apple devices. Everyone has a great phone in the US or iPad, and really our vision is for all of those devices to be used to really produce great content as well as help on the AI machine learning front.
And like we've seen some big strides. NVIDIA sort of had the throne. We see Apple, coming
Yep.
through with their M4 and their M4 Pro. Now people are able to run agents locally. And for those that don't know, that means like on airplane mode on their own laptop.
Yeah.
Pre-trained models that that, and now you're running it at home or inference on larger scale pieces on a piece like that. And so that's sort of like runs for a lot of cool things.
Yeah, we're really excited. You know what's been interesting is initially a large part of the bottleneck was elsewhere in the chip design. It was really around the cores. Where we're seeing it shift is more and more towards memory. And that's why a lot of what Apple's doing is so interesting is their architecture has more memory than a lot of the traditional NVIDIA models. And so it opens up new use cases in a way that I think are really exciting. I think Apple have done exceptionally well on the efficiency of their chips too. It's almost not comparable in terms of electricity usage. You've still got some absolute behemoths on the NVIDIA side that are workhorses and fantastic with hardware specifically designed for ray tracing on the rendering side. But it's really interesting as things potentially become more AI focused. The RAM side is a key element, and I think will only grow as these evolve.
So I'm one that consumes a lot of RAM. I don't know about a lot of people, but I'm the person that usually has 2 web browsers open and each one having like 90 tabs open.
Yep.
Normally when I'm streaming by myself, I don't care about video quality. And so I'll have 198 tabs open. For you, I closed 58 tabs.
Fantastic.
But I was just at Super AI a few weeks ago in Singapore, and HP was there. And I've stepped away from HP for a while, but like they've really been starting to come up on the technology side, and they had one of their new Z-books there for demoing. 256 gigs of RAM.
Yep. See how much memory is becoming such a key element of all this.
Lenovo was there, and they had some powerhouses. I was sad they didn't bring any of their Legion line. They were like, we didn't think this was the crowd for it, but we were wrong. And I was like, yeah you were. But
amazing.
It's one of those big things that we see, and this was one of the really cool things we get to do. We've done 2 series so far between Manifest and Render with some amazing guests, and we have our next one paneled for the 31st. But one of the questions that I had asked a long time ago, I think on the first episode, was, we hear centralized entities talking about how much they need GPUs and how little there are. And then we're seeing on the decentralized side, hundreds of projects that are stepping forward. Like, we have GPU galore.
Yeah.
And when will centralized entities tap that? I think is one of the next big plays that we're starting to see happen.
Well, I mean, on that front, you've got an AI industry that spent most of its formative years doing everything centralized, and for obvious reasons. Memory and proximity being really important to the training side. And so you've just had this chasm, of all these available GPUs, but the architecture not really being suited towards using them. And I was talking on that Spaces about over the last 6 months just how much has changed. Really starting with DeepSeek and being trained on less performant devices than an H100 and H200. But more importantly, the element of test time learning, which was really not doing all of the learning at training time, but at inference time, and opened up the ability to do things in parallel. And that gets us quite excited because that parallel is what the render network is really good at. But it's only continued as a number of projects have really tried to break down how much communication is needed between nodes while you're doing training. And the moonshot Kimi 2 announcement last week or 2 weeks ago, I think was another huge step towards getting there. What they did was they broke the model down into 380 plus submodels, so they can be quantized and they can fit very well across devices, which really helps. The other big change was on the Pluralis side. Between them and what Prime Intellect have been doing with DLoco, it's been amazing to see people solve what were sort of unsolvable problems. And each one of these gets us closer and closer to being able to use consumer GPUs at scale. And when I talk to guys like Eric and some of your guys' customers on the Jambra front, I'm actually buoyed because I'm starting to see more and more use cases for using these GPUs. And to me, the obvious analogy when I go back to rendering is, there are actually two schools or two paths of rendering. The one is the photorealistic path, and on that front, you essentially give up a little bit of time because it takes longer to create a photorealistic rendering today, and that may change as hardware and software get better, and has to if we want to get to a holodeck type experience. But on the other front, you've got real time, and that's the games, and you have a slightly less photorealistic but real time performance there. And so, we built the render network really to solve that first use case, the photorealistic offline type rendering. And the more we're looking at AI jobs, we're seeing there's a host that won't fit that need to be done immediately, that are very time specific. But there's a whole category of other ones where it's not as urgent to get it back in a tenth of a second, that waiting a little bit is not a problem, particularly if the cost can be reduced. And I think you're going to see a real swing on that front over the next coming year or so, as people realize they can do this at multiples less cost if they're willing to give up on the time side to a slightly less than real time performance,
You,
deliverable.
you talked about real time, and one of the really cool things that I know, I got to hear the story of Leonard Nimoy's son, and I forget the gentleman's name that played Shatner or played Captain Kirk.
Yeah,
But how
Sam Whipple. Yep.
Yeah, they were talking how they were doing the ending scene of Captain Kirk getting to say goodbye to Spock, and they were looking at each other, but then on the screen behind them, real time, Nimoy Jr. was seeing his dad's face on his.
Yeah.
And Sam was seeing Kurt, Shatner's face, 1980s, 1990s Kurt, Shatner face.
It's crazy.
And
I've seen that tech, and I've actually played with it a lot. So that's actually on the OTOY side. It hasn't yet made it to the render network, although there is hopefully a path towards getting there. But it's such a powerful tool. I look at it, and you click on the screen, and you can toggle between famous actors, and your face changes, and for a while you start seeing it move, and you get deeper and deeper into the performance. It's an absolutely crazy thing. Otoy has plans to really deliver that to actors in a way where it can absolutely subsidize what they're doing, help them get it right before they actually act the scene. And the real-time aspect of it is so freaky. I've got to say, where we're going with this is truly amazing. For us, we want to make sure it's human-centric, and that there's an
Mhm.
actor behind it. We're really not interested in giving up on performances and individuals. But the real-time aspect is exciting. And you saw my throw out to holodeck. I honestly believe one day we will get to the point of a very live interactive 3D experience. We're marching in that direction faster and faster as we get through these innovations on the software and hardware side.
And there's just so many cool aspects on it. Like even like um well, I forget the name of the movie, and now oh my gosh, he played Batman. Who was the original Batman? Not original Batman, not Adam West, but like 1990s Batman.
So we're talking
Keaton.
Keaton or Bale. Yeah,
He,
Keaton.
there was a
Yeah.
there was a movie with Keaton where he made like multiple copies of him, and they
Yep.
were talking about, I forget the name of the movie, but he was talking about how like he had to do the same scene like 40 times from different positions,
Right.
and they overlaid it. Where in like this type of thing, they could have 40 stand-ins and then do it
Yep.
all the same way.
Oh, there's some great improvements coming in terms of just spend. I think Hollywood will be able to produce amazing content at less and less cost, which to me only means more great content. So I'm quite excited there. We work because we have the studios on the Otoy front as our investors. We work with them and the talent, and it's been an interesting transition period. Folks are worried about AI, how it will affect their jobs, how it will affect their livelihood, and we're helping try and navigate all of that in a way that still benefits the actors and still comes back to an amazing performer underneath it. So yeah, it's been great to be part of that and to help try and chart a path that makes sense in what is a really tough time and groundbreaking time for the industry both at once.
But then there's also the room for animated videos as well.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
like one of the things that I wanted to touch on, because we were talking physics of light and everything like that. I
Yep.
remember the original Moana. They
Mhm.
hired a NASA engineer
Yep.
to design the physics of the water,
Yep.
so
Yeah.
that, and they made it into a 3D environment. So like basically they could, in the movie, throw a rock and water would act exactly how it was supposed to.
Yeah.
The reason I don't remember this story is because she was hired by Disney from NASA or Pixar, and then Disney lost her because then SpaceX hired her. And I remember because it made the waves that like someone was trying to FUD SpaceX. They're like, such clowns they hired from Disney. And then it turned out, oh, she was like this major astrophysicist. Like people just take the
Yeah.
headlines and ran with it, tried to run with it. And I'm like,
Backfired.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
All credit to those folks. Water and fire and trees, they've really been things that have taken years and years of craft to get to what you see in movies today.
Yeah.
I think in many ways they lean themselves towards procedural and AI, and so I think you're going to see more innovations in those areas, and there are going to be ways to do them faster and with less work than historically. But the folks who've walked this path before are absolute geniuses. Many of these. Um, just discoveries to bring real life physics to what you see on a big screen are absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And you think how far back and I'm not going very super far back. I'm going Jim Henson,
Mhm.
you know, and the modeling and puppets, you
Yep.
know, from like the days of Fraggle Rock to Dark Crystal, you know, and how everyone thought that was like that was peak awesome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then yeah, I remember someone they tried to recreate the Dark Crystal, and I was like, yeah, nope, that's not cool. I remember being in a theater in the like 89, 1990, filled with cigarette smoke, you know, and watching this freaked the heck out, you know.
When I talk to people about sort of the life-changing moment, many folks who've gotten to VFX, their life-changing moment seemed to have been Jurassic Park. It was a wow, that changed it for me. I saw a dinosaur come to life. Uh, you know, so that those guys did amazing work the whole way through to get to the point where we are today and build on these things. They're, truly pioneers.
Spielberg, did amazing piece like Jurassic Park. Yes. Like thinking of it, like this wasn't an alien movie. This wasn't, this was modern with like prehistoric combined. And
Yeah.
it wasn't a time traveler thing. It was like, what, Mr. DNA. And, this is, and now we have like that has now spanned 6 movies, and a 7th one is coming out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's interesting is how it's got Jurassic Park seems to have gotten darker and darker, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
true. True. Very, very much so. It's been rerunning the whole time the last couple of weeks. So I've managed to, on the walk by on the TV, see a lot of this. Why I raised that is we had one of our partners on stage at RenderCon, a company called Simulon. And their
remember,
their founder Devesh was one of those folks who was absolutely enamored that sent him down this path, and they've built a really cool VFX app that works on the iPhone, that works with traditional tools, and that will leverage the render network from a rendering side and hopefully from an AI side. So I'm loving the idea of people being able to create things like Jurassic Park on their own from their mobile phone, and for that to leverage the render
I
network.
I remember him showing that where he was like had taken a hike, and then he took a pano video, and then put it through the app, and it added a truck and then a dinosaur coming and running and hitting it.
Yep.
My only qualm with that is they're iPhone only.
You've got to start somewhere.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere,
Yeah.
and just thinking of where phones are at these days.
Mm.
Like my phone now, 1,000 gigs. 5 years ago, this was your computer.
Yeah.
Power, the
Oh,
amount of
without a
power.
doubt. Oh yeah.
And now for my laptop, I have 13 terabytes in external hard drives, and
Oh,
I'm
come on.
like wondering
Then you're
if I
running out
should
of
get
space.
more. And
Yeah.
I'm yeah, you know,
Isn't it
um,
staggering? How many
it,
pictures you have now too? It's like I looked at that the other day and I was just blows my mind. I don't know what you do with just this well of pictures.
yeah,
Yeah.
pictures, videos, interviews, shows. It's so there's so much, and
Yeah.
one of the things I'm working on, is one of my agents that I'm working on is like to just like go through all of that video and then like make a montage,
Yep.
you know,
Oh yeah.
and
Definitely an opportunity, and it would be a great agentic task.
yeah,
Man.
and one of the things that I saw that's really cool that's funny is people are. It was a scary piece because of how much editing it went into it. Die Hard Another Day, I think it was.
Yep.
Bruce Willis and the young little kid,
Yeah.
where they had all the different movie cut scenes giving a speech. And I've seen a lot of those being used now because people have what it is indexed. So
Yep.
now there's all the scripts to videos that are synced for like closed captioning and indexed. So they have all their entire
Trained
library
data.
of words.
Yep. It's just available. I've
Yeah.
got a close friend who was on that VFX team for that. Very interesting. sort of hearing the stories of how they created a lot of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just out of this world. But but there seems to be still two camps on the creation side.
Hmm.
The Blender
Hmm.
and Octane side, and then like the Unity
Yeah. Well,
slash side.
that comes back to the analogy. The Blender is the photorealistic, non-real time.
Hmm.
Unreal and Unity are the games engines. They're
Yeah,
coming at it from the real time. You know what I honestly believe will happen is at some point the hardware and software will get there where there isn't a divide between the two. I sort of see them as sort of, two trains racing towards each other. And I'm very hopeful that in the not too distant future we'll see one platform winning out on that, and us having more real time photorealistic content. It isn't going to be done without AI, and so there are a lot of hardware and software innovations coming together now that I think will lead to these better and better experiences. I was just thinking. I don't know if you've spent a lot of time with a Vision Pro on. But to me, it's such a prototype. It's very early stage. There isn't a lot of great content, but some of the experiences are really, really top notch. And I see us moving in that direction, albeit slower than we thought. I do think a 3D internet is more interesting, and I do think 3D experiences are more interesting. We'd hope they're actually less wearing a device like that and more latent displays that you can see. But either way, I think there's a lot coming in terms of really turning up the experience. And the great thing is those types of things will need to be rendered using the render network and using AI, hopefully using the render network.
yeah, no, I've seen. I haven't splurged yet on either Vision Pro or on like a Meta Quest and stuff like that. But seeing there was there's a lot of different companies coming out with smaller pieces,
Hmm.
like lens wearing, just overlay. So like
Yep.
this XR
Yep.
augmented reality, and
Yeah.
so I know Meta. They spent billions of dollars separating AR and VR, and then they scrapped that and spent another couple $1 billion getting rid of that and coming back to just XR,
Yep.
augmented reality. And it's an interesting play here. Like we're seeing, like there's the I'm getting ads nonstop on like Instagram for like the overlay glasses.
Yep.
We're just adding in different companies using different models,
Yeah.
add-ins from like Plod as well to augment what you're doing in meeting. And one of the really cool pieces is at first we saw everything like create a video of you doing something crazy that you would never do, and now all of the pushes are create that business you always wanted, you know from start to finish with natural language.
It's so interesting to me. I think where we are on LLMs, the interface is still emerging, right? And I don't think it will be the text prompt driven interface we see today. I think you've seen OpenAI and others talking about devices that are not necessarily something you hold, but something that listens and absorbs. And I think there's a lot that will be learned on local devices that have some intelligence. I really think Apple's strategy here makes a lot of sense to me. That some will be done locally, some will be done on the edge nearby you, and some will be done centrally. And I feel like yeah that's a perfect analogy for how I see things going with us and manifest and I think I can't wait to see the interfaces how they emerge on the AI LLM side as well as on the generative and visual side, because I think they're going to be very different from where you and I are now with a phone or a very clunky Vision Pro.
Yeah. No, and like you were saying, on your own device, inference on your own device, like Samsung gave like when I got the new phone, I had to go through all the settings and see everything that the phone can do because everything's integrated with AI now.
Yep.
And one of the choices was, do you want to do this on your own device or centralize it, And I'm like,
Yep.
I want my own device. you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's just on a privacy side for me personally.
Yeah.
But I'm also learning that I also came to the conclusion that I was stunting my own growth and knowledge by only using decentralized open source models and stuff. And so I've started to dive into a little bit more, Grok. I haven't gone for Grok heavy yet,
Yep.
because I don't
Yep.
see why I don't need yet to spend $300 a month on one model, where maybe I might end up spending 300 a month on 10 models,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, you're at such a rapid state of change at the moment that it's hard to keep up, and even committing for a month is is a hard thing to do. But we're very much the same. We're testing everything, and we're testing it from a filmmaking perspective as well as from a rendering perspective. There's stuff that's being done procedurally when you're rendering something that could well be done in code or by an AI. And so I look at some of the agentic work, and I'm quite excited. But same as you, I'm kind of playing with everything. I definitely know I don't want to give my data to a centralized party. I've kind of lived that for the last 20 years. So I'm sort of hesitant and do want to run anything that is private locally or in a closed, concerned way. But I'm definitely testing the strength and the power of the centralized providers, because I think it's so important to stay up to speed with what's happening in the um, AI world at the moment. Otherwise, you're left behind.
Yeah, no, I've started interacting. I forget Wu, Aaron Wu, I think, the founder of Cluely.
Mm,
I've said,
yeah,
cheat on everything. I've
yeah,
started interacting with him a lot more, and one of the pieces that one of the projects he sort of talked about that he tried out was like this San Fran based uh, dating app that's starting with a niche group, only people with a .edu, and I think that that's a smart move. We saw how well Facebook
yeah.
did with
That's how
that.
Facebook started, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And so like really a niche product for a niche group, and then to grow demand and use from there. But the privacy side was what I was asking. I was like, what is being done with this data, and is it being protected? I had some other model questions as well, but
Yep.
that was sort of like, one of those pieces where we're seeing AI being used in every different aspect. So the big question, one of the questions I have for you, what we're seeing, you get frontline with investors with Hollywood. Like I remember being
Mm.
invited to Warner Brothers Studio to talk to them 4 years ago about NFTs. One of my favorite titles that I get, that I didn't learn it until like maybe like 2 years ago, but what I was getting hired on as and brought in as a consultant, but a SME, a subject matter expert, a
On
taco.
NFTs.
Yeah. And being
Fantastic.
brought into
Yeah.
Warner Brothers Studio for that. And I was like, this is sort of crazy, you know,
Yeah.
that,
Yep.
there's
Yeah.
someone
Well,
named
so
Taco.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, well, I would hire you.
Yes. Hear that, manifest? But
But yeah, you were sort of leading to a question there around sort of what Hollywood's seeing
what's
at the moment, or yeah,
what's Hollywood seeing at the moment? And
you know.
without breaking any NDAs, what maybe you could talk about the subject. What movie is coming up on Render?
The good news there is actually I don't know. The way we built Render Network is end-to-end encrypted. It actually streams and runs in memory, and that's because we wanted artists to be able to protect themselves. And if you're working with Hollywood, you don't want any possibility of somebody being able to
IP.
take over that frame, get leak something on the latest Jurassic Park. So it's weird for me. I hear about all of these after. And they're big aha moments where, oh wow, that's absolutely amazing. I can't believe it. Westworld was such an eye opener for us at the start, but it seems more and more that the start and end of every movie, is done using Otoy and in many cases the Octane, in many cases the render network. What I'd say is if you look at the work, we had a guy at RenderCon called Andrei Lebrov, and I don't know if you met him, but very interesting character, amazing VFX guy. And he has unlocked a path towards creating not just the simple start and end of a movie, but proper VFX on the render network. And I've seen some of his work. He's produced some amazing videos. There's so much more to come. What I believe that does is actually unlocks VFX in a way that is truly amazing. Orders of magnitude less costs and speed on things created for VFX. So I'm very bullish about that as he reveals more and more of it, and as it bridges itself towards some of the people he works with. I would love to see more and more mainstream VFX come to the render network. I feel like it's a ripe opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's the creator side for using the render network, and it's really easy visiting Otoy. You have a really cool dual wallet functionality where even if people aren't even in Web3, they can load
Yep.
up on render credits and they can use the services with a credit card or a
Yep.
bank account.
Yep.
On the Web3 side of things, you guys eventually moved from Ethereum after half a decade. You moved to
Yeah.
Solana.
Yep.
What was the reason of moving to Solana?
All right. So great things. Yeah, I'll stay on the first thread that you had there. Very much for us, we want to solve for artist problems, and many of our
Mhm.
artists are not crypto native. So for them, the idea of needing to come to us with um, a cryptocurrency was just a non-starter. They wanted something simple. They wanted something priced in a relatively stable price, and so really building for artists meant solving for that on-ramp to crypto by them not even knowing they're actually involved in and touching a project that utilizes crypto. And that's amazing because I view it as sort of a flywheel start where they start touching crypto and they start touching the render network and then learn that it runs on render underneath it, that potentially they can get a node on the network, that they can earn render and use that as a battery to then do their work. So there's a great flywheel of onboarding artists there, number one. On the Solana side, I think we started as an OG Ethereum project. We were an ICO back in 2017,
Yeah.
and a lot has changed since then. I mean, Ethereum has grown up, but still, its gas feeds and speed of transaction are just not there for micropayments. When I'm talking $12 to render, something, and you're talking a gas fee of $12. You're probably not using the right technology there. And we did step towards layer two. We tried on Matic, on Polygon, but ultimately the throughput and significant cost reduction from there, I think were two key drivers that our community list. What I'd also say is, we're on the Otoy side, as C++ shop, the really core GPU work has always been at that level. And the probably the closest ecosystem to that we wanted to invest in was Rust. And so Solana being a Rust project really was a key pull for doing some Rust GPU work. In fact, their whole ecosystem has been absolutely amazing in how they've welcomed us, in how we've been able to reuse some stuff from other projects, other deep-in pioneers, and just accessibility of everyone in the ecosystem. So for us, it was a community-driven move, and it's really been rewarding on the other side, being a Solana deep-in project.
I've seen a lot of deep in projects that have migrated to Solana because of those same reasons. And one of the really cool things about Solana, like you said, is how accessible everyone and anyone is. Like,
Mm.
you want to come build here, cool. How can we
Yeah,
build together?
yeah,
And yeah, it's sort of funny, when ETH gas fees got super high, everyone had laughed at me about Solana. And then when ETH gas wars started, people started asking me, how much did you say your transaction happened to cost again?
yeah,
And I was like, a tenth of a penny. And
yeah.
they're like, no. and so I see that too, especially if you're rendering frame pieces, how you're moving through on those
Yep.
things. And so you've done this big transition to Solana, and I remember hearing once there was even talk of building your own network, but now something like
Yeah.
that is actually coming about, and
Yeah.
not for a blockchain perspective, but on a GPU side. Can we
Yeah.
talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, wow. Well, we've definitely built our own network, but I think you're talking more about building our own blockchain, and definitely there was a lot of discussion, a lot of thought around being our own L1. When we made this switch, I spent some time talking to a lot of projects who'd done that. Helium was one that was really interesting, and they counseled us against a lot of the wallet integration pain and centralized exchange pain that sounded like skills that we didn't really have in-house. So, we're very good at the artist side and understanding their needs, and we've got an amazing team built around that. But as it came to, you know, running our own L1, it becomes more and more of a complex problem. And we were already fairly liquid across every centralized and decentralized exchange. So going back to having your own L1 at that point was even more challenging in terms of just token liquidity. Um, I would say though that we definitely don't do as much on chain as I think we will in the future. And
Yeah.
for us, a lot of the story has been around provenance, around proof of creation. And as that becomes more important now with I really believe you're going to see us leveraging more of the full feature set that Solana brings. And potentially, if we've got a supplement and roll up or do other things there, I'm sure there'll be innovative things that help get us towards the vision of being our own L1. But we've been so happy with what they brought to the table and the community that it's been a fantastic move so far.
Nice. Yeah, no, I saw, so we saw Sony launch Sonium, because originally they were going to launch on Polkadot, and then on a star, but then they decided to do a star fork and then change it into an OP Optimism, be part of the OP Super Stack, and launch
Yep.
a star fork as an OP Super Stack. And so, because as Sony wanted to do, they wanted to sort of, eventually put like all of their pictures on chain, and that, as you said, that protect that provenance as well. But
Yep.
then they put some censorship pieces on that. But one of the things you talked about is the encryption of data and the
Hmm.
privacy. You don't know what's being rendered on the render network,
Yep.
because that's not your job.
Right.
And
Right.
and so your job is to make sure a job happens safely, and because you're courting, or not even courting, Hollywood studios are using you because you're putting that layer of privacy on that, and
Yeah.
so they know that their data is protected and their IP is protected, and so you really sort of set the stage for creators and protecting the rights. And I think that's really cool. We've seen
Yeah.
we've seen artists be abused and reused. Um, I think that the one that's a hats off moment, you know.
Yep.
Um,
Well, thanks.
but
Well
I
said. And
Yeah,
we're artists ourselves, so I can't say I am, but Jules and a lot of our core team are, and my hats off to them. It's amazing to create stuff, and yeah, we want to make sure that creation is easier and that creators are protected and paid.
yeah. And you put that first. That's one of the really cool things there. And so, but what you have coming up next is more geared towards like the AI side, right? Can we talk about that, or no?
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
yet.
of course we can. We can. Well, some of its roadmap, there's a proposal out there, RNP 19, which is really a huge first step to setting up a subnet. And that's progressing. I mean, I'm really excited. I cannot wait to be running jobs live on the network. It's a really important first step. Man, I just see it as the start. You know, I I cannot wait. Just talking to the team about next steps and how we scale this, it's very clear that this is a massive opportunity for the render network, and the global community of tens of hundreds of thousands of high-end consumer GPUs really needs to be served in a way here.
Nice. How easy is it for someone to get started on the render network? Like if they're wanting, how quickly is it?
Yeah.
Can someone set up, on that? How easy is it? Do you know?
So the real challenge is actually you've got to be an artist who understands how to use these workflows. The product is phenomenally easy, but the skill set of being able to create a scene and convert it is not something that is simple out of the box. It's getting much easier, and that's
Mhm.
why products like Simeon and others I'm so excited by. But the actual aspect of uploading a scene is absolutely simple. The challenge is more on the creation side, and that challenge comes not only technically but also on creating a vision and having that vision to start with. Then when you talk about using our generative AI tools, we have a number that we've built in, and those are probably more the lower down the totem pole creator. The way I view this is, the motion graphics industry is somewhat niche and specialized. There aren't a million motion graphics artists out there. But if you look at just the next step below that, the Photoshop creators, that's a much larger pool. That's in the somewhere close to 10 million range. When you look at the TikTok generation and the self-generated content, the YouTubers, it's obviously in the billions. So there's a very linear path as these tools become easier to go from a small niche of motion graphics artists to the Adobe generation or the Adobe creators to ultimately anyone with a phone or a device. You know, we're definitely at the onset of that, and we can't wait for it to be more democratized. That's really been our ethos and mission from the start.
Yeah. Well, and so that's the creator side. What about
Mm.
for like those that want to provide compute to the render network?
Yeah.
And like,
So yeah.
yeah, what about that path?
Yeah, so that path is also relatively simple. There's a client that they install. It's a very thin client because nothing's really installed. It's streamed on the rendering side. But y- you know, running a two-sided marketplace is challenging. We've got the supply and demand, and we don't want to get to a position where people are not making money with their nodes or
Mhm.
ultimately leave us. So we've had a wait list where we've just held back adding new nodes onto the rendering side of the render network while we build up usage of the network and get to that scale point. So it's been frustrating for some folks because they all want to be part of this and contribute, and they haven't been able to until we hit this point of RNP 19 and opened up at least a small group of folks to be test sub nodes for the compute side. And that trial is just 100 nodes. We're actually still actively looking for them. They need to be US nodes and they need to be Linux nodes. But if you have a node that sort of fits those two, there's a very simple way to apply, and we've been onboarding folks as quickly as we can just to get this first test net up and running, and so that we can test how jobs are run from partners like Manifest and from partners like many others, scripted or intelligent internet. And once we have that down and covered, I do think that will be the area where you then see us opening it up and it being very simple for anyone to contribute their compute. I think we're quite excited by the prospect there.
Yeah, you brought up a really awesome project there, Intelligent Internet.
Mhm.
Ahmad,
Mm.
for those that don't know who Ahmad is, the founder of, oh my gosh, why do I always, not Singularity? Oh, what
Stability.
was it?
Yeah.
Stability.
Yep.
Yes. And an intelligent internet is him wanting to give AI access to everyone.
Right.
And he's working, with a subgroup right now. The in Africa, and I think he said like 2,000 tablets, and he's like, these kids in like 3 months learned 2 years worth of education and just
So Mark's been
advanced on that.
an advisor to the project, and he's absolutely amazing. One of the um, top minds and most cutting edge in the AI space. So I absolutely value every interaction we have with him, and he's helped guide us along the way. He had a proposal last year that we put out, and as we dug deeper, counseled on actually pulling it back. The space was moving too fast, and I can't wait to actually have his team onboarded as part of this RNP and start using it. And what that could hopefully unlock in terms of his world models, in terms of a lot of the stuff he's chasing on the medical side. It's really, really amazing stuff.
Yeah, no, and I got to meet and talk with him. I've met him in a couple different places, but I actually got to have like a chance of like a 15-minute talk with him, at RenderCon. And there was the one person I didn't get to talk to that was there was Beeple. He was the only other person the only person there that I didn't get to talk to. Like,
yeah, he was just on the screen. He wasn't there in person. So
yeah.
you didn't miss anything there. We just saw him at his New York exhibit listing. It was amazing. That was during permissionless. Yeah, he's always done a great job of really navigating the cutting edge tech, and he's been doing some very cool stuff on the generative side as well as physical. Yeah, an amazing artist.
That I must have missed him being on screen there, because there was a gentleman there that looked, I guess, out of place like me at RenderCon, and I was like, that must be Beeple, yeah, I guess he was, and I missed him on screen.
Nobody's out of place. They're all amazing creators in their own right.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and I just it was you did something really cool with RenderCon, and you made a very nice, intimate setting with like 2 different stages of different things going on at different times, so people could get their right flavor. And one of the things that you got to sit down and sort of, and we haven't talked on, but the render foundation side of things,
Yep.
and the nonprofit side.
Yeah. The foundation is relatively new in the tenure of the Render network, and was really just a natural progression. As we went from just running OTOI Octane render jobs on the network to adding other third-party renderers, like Redshift and Blender Cycles, and as we started pointing towards doing AI jobs, it really showed this was much broader than just one provider and a utility project underneath it. And the foundation assumed really the management of the nodes, and that's sourcing, paying, and growing the node side. Really, they took over everything on chain and chose a burn mint equilibrium model. So they're also tasked with burning and grants and emissions around that. But it's truly been a fantastic body to add to the project. It's positioned OTOI more squarely as a one of the key contributors, as opposed to the original founders. And we've got an amazing foundation team. I think they put on a hell of a show at RenderCon, and really value working with those folks and watching them really grow this community in an amazing way.
Yeah, getting to sort of talk with Simon, Tristan, and just as scratching the surface there, Sylvia, like, you guys are building. I'm excited, and it's one of those things from where you guys were always, like, for me, like a side pocket, like, cool, like, I was looking at it and I was like, man, I had so much render when it was 10 cents and sold when it was 30 cents. And I'm like, I don't like to talk about prices that often, but like, because like you guys have stuck around and grown, and you guys, like, The Web3 side of it is just for that proof of work side of things and moving those credits around. But like, and what you have more planned in the future is sort of amazing. And so from a company side, you've abstracted the blockchain away to where it is an underlying foundation, but it's not who you are. But the foundation side has really sort of pushed that forward, where you guys are able to sponsor artists and give credits and run contests for creators. And I still really love, and I've given flowers on this before, but I remember there's a gentleman that created a listener bot on Twitter that sort of like proof of work, proof of burn of render sort of like being used and burned. And he's like, I've upgraded this, but I just can't cover this anymore. And the foundation sort of just stood up and was like, this is an amazing community tool. We got you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. The whole concept of a foundation as we mature and become more and more decentralized has truly been amazing. And you're right. The community does so much here in this project. I'm always blown away at just how much the community has bonded together and the strength of that group at RenderCon, meeting the different constituents, meeting the artists, meeting node operators, meeting folks who've been, just part of the project, incidentally over the years was truly rewarding. Yeah, we're long-term players in this. You can tell, we've got a goal we want to solve in democratizing this content creation, and so for us, it's great to see folks who've been on this journey for the longest time and know where we're going.
Yeah. So we've talked about some of like the American creators and stuff like that. I haven't really seen what's coming out of like Asia and like Europe. What are you seeing any of the like creations on like the anime side, or like,
Yeah,
I don't want to say tribal, but like
of course.
cultural side, you
No,
know?
of course. We've definitely seen some amazing anime products rendered. What I would say is we're already global. Just because RenderCon was in the US, you probably saw a lot of more US folks because it was a long travel haul. But we do meet up with a lot of our community at other events. When we get to things in Europe and in the East. And what always blows me away is how global the community already is.
Yeah.
Be it a node operator or be it an artist, they truly are everywhere, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I missed you in con,
Yeah,
and during ECC, and getting to sort of talk about like where we see different artists coming from. It's really interesting and really cool. I love sort of seeing some of like deep diving, in my free time, sort of just rolling the timeline on render tags is pretty freaking awesome. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
um, it what's next?
Well, as I said on the RNP19 compute side, I think I can't wait to get this live to start seeing the types of jobs that are out there and scaling. I think also, we're in the middle of just this huge transition as AI changes how things are created. And, we honestly believe that things will be created through a combination of traditional and AI. And so, we're very focused on what those workflows may look like and how to integrate aspects of those into tools that make sense for artists. We announced Otoy AI at RenderCon, and that will be a completely new interface with all sorts of generative elements that are useful to artists. That will also utilize the render network wherever these models can be run locally. So I really see this almost end-to-end generative plus agentic workflow on the 3D side coming together, using a host of different models, some hosted locally, some hosted on the cloud, and some on the render network. And I can't wait to see that mature and what it can unlock for people to create.
Yeah, no, um, one of the quotes that was given at in Paris during the Raise Summit. It's a quote that I really like, and I will butcher it because I always do. But it's Lumiere's law. So one of the creators of cinematography in France 100 years ago, we look through the lens of technology. We look through the technology through the lens of today, meaning we're binding it to what we already know. So I totally butchered it, but the short end of it is we only see what technology can do, new technology, by the lens of today. So we don't necessarily know its bounds yet. So we don't even know what's possible. What's been possible isn't even imagined yet. And I think render sort of gives a really good power to imagination.
Love it. Love it.
If I didn't butcher it, it would be better. But we have another render and manifest space coming up on the 31st, and I know we're working on some of the stuff there. Where is render going to be next, conference-wise?
Conference-wise, I mean, I think the next will be IBC and BlenderCon in September in Amsterdam.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And I think I saw.
Oh no,
Jules.
actually, I'm wrong. Jules is talking. It will be at SIGGRAPH in August. So Jules will be talking at the NVIDIA side event there. So yeah, well, although won't be whole team, but definitely there'll be some definite render network stuff covered there.
I have to. I'll probably have to work on earning a lot of favor chips to see if I can get a one-on-one like this with Jules. That would be sort of fun.
He's an amazing individual. I always love the interaction. So you'll love that.
It was really funny at RenderCon. We had some of our little manifest robots. And I was talking with a woman, and her little baby saw the robot and grabbed it and was playing with it. And next thing I know, Jules comes up, and I was like, oh. And then Jules has the baby, and I was like, with them, and he's like, oh, do you want? I was like, and so it was sort of hilarious on that aspect. And Jules was like, oh, thanks, and it was just really cool, just sort of. I was a little struck by that, but it was, and I was like, oh shoot, but I don't know, the whole render community, like you said, supports builders and creators, and so I think that's like a key, one of the key institutes of like being part of the future,
Amazing. Taco, you see, we could chat for hours. We're an hour and 15 in here, and I love the conversation.
Yeah, no, and I wanted to sort of be respectful, because I know you, like, we were supposed to start 2 hours ago. You literally flew. You were delayed flight, and so like you threw your stuff in your room, and then you were like, "Let's go," And so I know you have a ton of stuff you got to prep for tomorrow and Friday. So, Trevor, I want to thank you, so much for your time today.
Fantastic.
Any last things you want to touch on before we leave?
No, I'm as I said, I'm a big fan of Manifest, and love what you do there. And so for me, happy to be involved here and on it, and kind of looking forward to more spaces with you. So, we'll be talking to the community quite soon.
Definitely. So this show has gone on now this is 996 times. And this show ends with two things, words of wisdom, and I have the greatest, worst knock joke on the face of the planet. So because you are here, final thoughts and words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom. Wow. Well, I don't know. Life's short, play hard. That's always my mantra. I go at it as, we've got things to do here, and we really want to show the world what can be done. Uh,
All right.
God, a knock knock joke. I'm well past a knock knock joke. I may need some help from you.
Oh, don't worry. I have the knock knock joke. I have told this knock knock joke 965 times. But my words of wisdom are always the same. And so my words of wisdom are: a closed mouth cannot be fed, and you cannot feed a closed mouth. Meaning, if no one knows you're looking for opportunity, opportunity can never come a knocking. If opportunity does come knocking and no one answers, it's going to keep on walking. With that, I want to thank everyone for joining us for TacoBytes, your daily bite of Degen, episode number 966, live with Dr. Trevor Jones from the Render Foundation and Otoy. Trevor, this has been an amazing time. Shout out to everyone on LinkedIn, Player One Taco YouTube, 0xDegens YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Telegram, Rumble, Kick, on-chain via Abstract, on-chain via Arena, and for the giggles of it, Pump.fun. I did a quick look at one point. We had over 500 people watching us just talk. And you are one of those people that I could just talk to about, what did you have for dinner?
Yeah,
Type of
exactly.
things, and so we get to end with the greatest, worst knock knock joke on the face of the planet. Are you ready for this joke?
Bring it on. I'm ready.
Knock knock.
Who's there?